Perfect. So welcome to the 10th session of the TIEMS conference. For the last session, we will discuss economic issues related to emergency services. We will listen to 5 speakers, valued experts of the topic. Mr. Tounemat and myself, Anaïs Saint-Johnson, will facilitate the discussions. So maybe Mr. Tounemat, may I let you present yourself first?
Yeah, thank you, Anaïs. So I'm Nizar Tounemat. I'm working for the French Commission for Atomic Energy, and I'm in charge of all topics related to the application of smart digital systems to security and defense. Thank you, Anaïs.
Okay. As for me, I am a professor specialized in public management for Aix-Marseille University, and I work a lot with the fire department of the Bouches-du-Rhône in France. So the first presentation, we will listen to Dave Waterhouse, who's the division chief in the Montreal Fire Department. Am I right? Yes. And Mr.
That is right. Thank you.
Mr. François Delorme, you teach economics at Sherbrooke University, and you are also a consultant.
Ton micro, François.
Okay, I will give you time to present yourself at the beginning of your presentation. Just to know what will happen next, we will listen to other presentations made by Lieutenant Colonel Jean-Paul Monet, Chief Officer of the Quality Management Division in the Bouches-du-Rhône Fire Department, France. From the same fire department, then we will listen to Anan Chadli-Mauricio, who's in charge of the Evaluation Office of Quality Management Division. And we will listen to Henri Carlavant, risk analyst in the planning division. And last but not least, we will listen to Nouela Amir, who currently works at the ENI Gas and Power France as a risk control manager. For the participants, feel free to participate in the chat by commenting or asking questions. Speakers can also directly answer in the chat if they want to, but we will select a few questions after every presentation to discuss the topics furthermore. So I give so we have 20 minutes now for listening to Mr. François Delorme and Mr. Dave Waterhouse. You can share your presentation with us.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Saint-Johnson. I will share my screen now. Just tell me if everything's okay. Is it good?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. So welcome, everyone. Mr. François Delorme and I, Dave Waterhouse, we will talk to you about the economic impact of a fire department's operational activities. It's based on a study, some studies that we did in North America and Canada, basically. So, trying to. All right. So, the study was made on a single fire department, and what we wanted to accomplish is to estimate the value of what was saved by the work of firefighters, being the economic impact, instead of measuring what was lost, as we are used to measure. Our case study is the Sherbrooke Fire Department. Sherbrooke is a city on the south shore of Montreal in the province of Quebec in Canada. So the study was broken down in 4 parts. Part 1 being fires in commercial buildings. We did not do residential buildings because the commercial building and industrial building part is where there's the bigger payoff. The second part was the economic value of interventions in a pre-hospital medical emergency. The third part was the strategic part. I don't see my slide there, but the strategic sector of
important.
Pardon? Anyway, yeah, thank you. The strategic importance of protecting key economic activity, and the fourth part was a comparative analysis of all the economic impact studies that we know of and that we made also. The foundation on which we based our methodology was the sectoral structural of an economy, which is widely known throughout the world. There's at the base of the pyramid, the primary sector, which is the basic productions of goods and services, being agriculture, forestry, mining, and fishery. There's the secondary sector, which is production of goods, so this is the transformation of what has been produced in the primary sector. So there's industry, construction, crafts, and there's the tertiary sector, which is services, trade, banks, transport, education, culture, and health services. So we'll take you through the methodology of the 4 parts of the study, so you can understand how we manage to break down an economic impact of a fire department throughout its operational activities. So the first part, the commercial buildings, what we did is a modelization of an input-output model. The input being the value of the fire-stricken business, the value of the building and the land. There was also we did the NACE code classification for each fire. What is the NACE code? A NACE code is short for North American Industry Classification System, which is something that permits us to slot the fire-stricken business in either the tertiary sector, secondary sector, or the primary sector, which gives a bigger economic impact. Let's say, for example, there's a logger that is chopping down a tree, and then so this logger has a salary, pays tax, and then the wood log is being transported. So the transporter is paying taxes, and so he all the way through the economic chain, there's a contribution. So this is where the more you intervene at the start of the economic chain, the more there's the payoff down the road, all the way through the small piece of paper down at the store for that same log. So there's primary sector, which is logging. Then there's secondary sector, the transformation of the pulp wood, the wooden pulp. And then there's the tertiary sector, which is the distributions of goods and services that were made by this log. So the more the fire-stricken business is at towards the primary sector, well, the more the impact on the whole economic chain. So once we get to slot an ACE code on every fire-stricken business, we can put them in the economic chain, which
Dave,
the output.
may I add something?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. The advantage of, as Dave said, of the input-output modelization, it is very light. It's very easy to use. And in Canada, we have an industry classification that is up to 6,000 subsectors and sectors. So as Dave said, we can isolate which is the trigger industry, let's say the primary sector, and then follow the value chain up to the service sector. And then we can, the input-output modelization then allows us to have an assessment, a quantitative assessment in terms of percentage of GDP of the direct effects and the indirect effects. So it's very important. Then we just don't capture the first round effect, but the second, the third, and the fourth. And then after that, we can have an assessment of the multiplier effect. And this is, of course, when the value chain is very long, and then the fire, let's say, affects the primary sector, then the more will be the more powerful will be the multiplier effect and the cost savings as well in terms of GDP.
Thank you.
Sorry, Dave. I just
no, it's fine. Perfect. I couldn't have said it better. So what we did also as an input, we called every fire-stricken business, and so the output being the whole job savings and the economic impact and dollar value for that part. So this is for fires. Then for pre-hospital emergency medical interventions, we started from something that is widely known, which is the value of a statistical life. we narrowed it down to $8.1 million per life, which is the ethics part of it. We have to take it aside. I know it's a sensible topic right now, but and how did we manage to take, let's say, 100 interventions of cardiac arrest and narrow it down to the one that got out of the hospital without neurological disabilities? Well, there's the Utstein chart that does that. So we basically multiplied that specific number by the value of a statistical life, which gave us the economic impact of EMS calls. Then there's the third part, François.
Yes. So what we did for the city of Sherbrooke in particular, and we can do it for every region that we're studying, is we try to apply and have an idea of the industrial structure of the region, the country, or in that case here, the city of under the scrutiny. And then here we decided to focus on Sherbrooke is very heavily involved in primary industry activities. So we were able to use that and use the effects that we had in terms of economic impacts to apply to the specific structure of the region. So it helps our policymakers and our persons that are funding the study to have, okay, but we want to have not only a macroeconomic effect of the economic savings or the value of the life saved, but we are able to focus and down on the very specific nature of the region by trying to focusing on the economic sectors. So in the case of Sherbrooke, it was extremely important because, of course, if a lot of industries in the primary sectors are affected by fires, then the value chain that I talked about before is going to be very important. And of course, the effects on unemployment rate or on the regional activity can be very important. The last part is that we wanted to use metrics. We didn't want to have that study just by itself and not able to be compared with comparing with other studies. So we made sure that all the value, as long as maybe it's in terms of GDP or in terms of multiplier effects, that we're using metrics to be able to compare to others, because it's not, methodologically speaking, you can have a lot of results, but if your results are specific and cannot be compared to what has been done before, it's not very helpful in terms of helping others. So we made sure that the comparative variables that we use in terms of final results were comparable to other studies. So that helps us to say, well, let's say in Australia, the cost savings were 2% of GDP, and here it was 4% of GDP. And then it gives an idea of harmonizing the effects. And it was very important for us to be able to compare our results with others.
Good. And so the empirical results of the study was that the SPCIS is the Sherbrooke Fire Department effectively saved a total of 1,917 jobs in 1 year only, 2017. The economic value preserved from the 10 businesses affected by fire was $368.8 million for commercial building fires only. With a median, and also for EMS calls, with a median value of $8.1 million, the economic value for cardiac respiratory arrest calls in 2017 is estimated at $64.8 million. So in the end, I just can't see, sorry. Given the total generated value of $433.6 million, it has been demonstrated that every dollar invested in the Sherbrooke Fire Department with a $20 million budget yielded a return on investment of 2,168%. which is the economic impact. And we did also an economic, not an economic, but a comparative chart of all the economic impacts of other fire departments that we know of. The first one being the Phoenix Fire Department that was done in 2012. The second one was Orange County in California. And then the third one in the middle was the first one that Francois and I did in Montreal. The fourth one is Lévis, which is a suburb just south shore of Quebec City in the province of Quebec in Canada. And the fifth one was Sherbrooke Fire Department that we presented to you. So you can see in red the difference in economic value preserved and the job saved with different realities of fire departments. There's in blue, there's the cardiac respiratory arrest economic value, which wasn't done by Phoenix or Orange County. We only did that in Montreal, Lévis, and Sherbrooke. The conclusion was, being the total economic impact on the annual budget of every fire department gives a return on investment. And there's the comparative analysis that Francois talked of, which is in the bottom of your page. In conclusion, well, we achieved our goal, which was to prove that the fire department is not just an expense, it rather represents an investment that has a direct economic impact on activity and employment for the city of Sherbrooke and the whole province of Quebec. But more broadly, what the message we can send with that was that we have the organizations, we're supported by organizations in Quebec, the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs, Quebec Association of Fire Chiefs, and fire departments. And there's also the Ministry of Public Security, which has funded those studies and still help us. Well, we are changing mentalities. So the perception of elected officials is not just, oh, it costs a lot to have a fire department. No, the fire department gives a return on the money you put it in. So just so you can understand the dynamic of it all, which was our main goal initially. And there's also now we went to fires, EMS calls, but we wanted to prove that there are other ways also to demonstrate the economic impact of a fire department. In Montreal in 2016, we had a fuel truck that exploded on an elevated highway right in the center of Montreal. So we did a specific economic impact study for that specific event. So basically, Francois is going to take us through it, but shortly. But it's just to show you that we can also do gas leaks, technical rescues, but we haven't done it. This proves that there are other ways to measure also the economic impact of a fire department's operational activities. We're just scratching the surface on that topic for sure. Francois, do you want to take us through that specific study?
I will go very, very quickly because we are short of time, but
yeah.
Really here, the idea was for a given amount of time, the traffic was totally paralyzed. And of course, there are people that couldn't go to their job that day, or there was other economic impacts that were encountered by that accident. And then what we wanted to do for that specific event is what were the economic consequences of having that accident in terms of jobs, hours worked, and loss of economic activity again. So we didn't use a model for that. We use different, very precise data from the Department of Transport, and we use the hourly and average wages. And so we use a study that was scientifically sound, but was very specific for that event. But it shows that whether we use a aggregate approach, or we can use a very specific approach to assess and ascertain the economic impacts of fires, and or in that case, it was a traffic accident, but the firefighters were called as well. So I think it shows the flexibility of the different approaches that we use for our policymakers, okay? Because policymakers, as Dave said, it's very important to change the view and the perception that we spend money on fire departments. In fact, it's an investment. It's exactly like public health, but it's important to show to our policymakers that, well, first, here are the costs and the benefits. And second, that when we spend $1 or €1 or whatever money that we use, currency that we use, it's an investment. And what is the return on that investment? And then changes the whole perception that we have of spending money on fire departments.
Thank you. Looking forward, what we're doing right now, we have 2 more slides left, and so this is what we have done for now, which has already changed perceptions of policymakers, elected officials, and also fire chiefs all around wherever we present this. Fire chiefs, they say, "Oh my God, we've just taken a new pair of glasses and look at our fire departments now." And what we are working right now on, Mr. Delorme and I, the first one being the study of the economic and socio-economic impacts of fire prevention. So what we talked about was a very interventionist model, being at the starting point being the 911 call, or the emergency call that a person makes for EMS and also fire for a commercial building. Now we wanted to take it before. I'll always make a parallel of health services. So do we have to build more and more hospitals and hire more and more nurses and doctors, or can we go and prevent all the health issues by better eating habits and more exercise and better health hygiene? Well, we wanted to make the same parallel with fire prevention by having better building codes, better programs for educating people and everything. So we're narrowing down an economic impact of that. This is going to be finished in 2021. And there's also an initiative that was put forward by the government of Canada, which is the total cost of fire in Canada, which follows the same study that was made, total fire in the United States, by the NFPA Research Foundation, which François and I participated in. It was published in 2018. So we took you through all of our of what we did for now, and we're still continuing in that down that road with other, as you can see, other innovations in demonstrating the economic impact of a fire department. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure, a real pleasure being here. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for the valuable presentation. I think we have a few questions. Maybe Mr. Tsulemat has a question first, and then we'll answer the participants' questions.
Thank you, Anaïs. Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation, and I really like the parallel made with health prevention. So I have one question related to fire department doctrine. So a few years ago, I had the chance to spend some time in Montreal. By the way, I love this city. And one day we heard the fire alarm in the building where I was living, and everyone went out into the street. And I was surprised that no one called the fire department. And my neighbors told me that we have first to check if there is a real danger before calling, because the movement of the firefighters is billed. So I don't know if it's to the owner or to the tenants of the building. So maybe you can confirm or not that. So it seems that this doctrine is different from what is adopted in France. When I discussed with French firefighters, they told me that, so we know that here an intervention is free of charge. And firefighters told me that they prefer to move for nothing than moving and arriving too lately with, human and all kind of damages. So do you confirm this kind of doctrine?
I will.
In Montreal, or maybe in Canada, and I think that it's kind of an investment also made on by in France, that okay, we might move for nothing, but at the end we will it will be real investment and very more beneficial. So I don't know if you made some kind of comparisons related to this difference in the doctrines adopted.
Yeah, well, thank you for your question. It's very important. First off, I'll start by saying every intervention is free in Montreal. Okay, what we did was, after 5 or 6 intervention in a building where there's a certain percentage of delinquency with faulty alarm systems, which doesn't protect the tenants or the people inside the building, because it always rings for nothing, and then the people don't get out at some point. So we had to put in a certain system, and we have to. So there's, after I think it's 5 or 6 times that we go at the same address, and there's no improvement of the fire alarm system, then we give some sort of a financial penalty, saying to the owner of the building, you have to put your alarm system up to date, and it has to be fully functional, otherwise it doesn't protect the people. So the billing is only to the owner of the building. It's not to the tenants, and every intervention in Montreal is free. EMS calls and fire calls, it's always free. It's always going to be free, but that specific thing, it's important that you mentioned. But we wanted to change a behavior on the part of the building tenants. So there's less and less delinquency in maintaining the alarm system, and it worked, because the statistics says that we have less and less faulty alarm systems as time goes.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are 2 questions in the chat about assessing statistical life by Simona Cavallini, who asked, how did you assess human life costs? How can you answer that? I think we have some clues about that in the next presentations, but maybe you can tell a word about it.
I'll let Francois answer this one.
Yeah, we just use the standard approach that is to assess the value of statistical life. There's 2 main approaches. We use the most
documented.
Right? Pardon me.
The most documented in scientific.
Exactly. And then we just made a survey of the literature in Canada on that, and we decided to use the median value of the different studies. We didn't estimate that. We didn't take into account the different genders, the different sex, the different income levels, the different situation in terms of employment. It's an aggregate analysis, and there was no contention with respect to, or any questions with respect to that, because it's mainly something that is widespread, and we know what are the shortcomings. We know that there are problems, but either we use something that is imperfect or we use nothing. So we decided to go with the literature on that, and we use the median value of the different recent empirical studies that were performed in Canada, in the Canadian context. And this is something that even the Government of Canada departments are using. So we know that we are in the ballpark.
Okay, thank you. So there are other questions, but we don't have the time to ask them all right now. But Mr. Waterhouse and Mr. Delorme, maybe if you can answer by writing in the chat. So in the bottom of your screen, you should see answers and questions. If you can answer some of it. It's now time to listen to Ambre Carnavant, who will talk about protection, how protection produces value. And she is a risk analyst from... yes?
I guess it's me.
It's you, sorry. Yes. So we're listening to Jean-Paul Monet, who will talk about how protection produces value.
Do you hear me correctly now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Dave. That was a very fruitful conference, and we will stay in contact for sure. And my point is now to I would like to I manage my PPT. My point is now to present a general overview about the studies we launched 4 years ago in France, witnessing of a real changing of paradigm, excuse me, because at the beginning, as exactly as Dave said, we were counting the losses 20 years ago, and then we said we saved one house, or we saved maybe a business, or maybe some employments, and now we decided very short time ago to begin to evaluate it, and we have a collaborative work, because it was for us fully necessary to work with universities, because it gives a kind of acknowledgement of our work, and the credibility is increased when the theses are coming from university rather than a simple article issued by a fire department. So we worked with Toulouse School of Economics, which is a famous school with Nobel Prizes, and they produce the beginning of the work. Then we work with AgroParisTech about more environmental studies. So that's all the authors I want to thank, and it's a kind of overview and presentation of what has been done and what will be precised by the further talks. Of course, this idea, this change of paradigm emerged during the phase of the changing public management in the public bodies in France, of course. And the idea is, of course, to have a better monitoring on performance, on planning, and also to search efficiency by the Deming's wheel and all the works. You have a famous champion in Canada, Mintzberg, who wrote many papers about management and planning and strategic planning as well. So that is totally in this aim, even if now everything is changing with COVID. Management is also largely evolving. So we would like not to be in the past, but to be in the future with these works. So, of course, there is also a small idea of promotion of the fire service. It's what we call communications. And the main principle of our work are to search very simple calculation, because we have very good database in France, which are collected by Ministry of Interior about the statistics of the services, the budget as well, but nothing about saved losses. So we decided, after reviewing a thesis issued by Toulouse School of Economics in 2016, to go over this work and to document other things. And the main idea was the driven idea was the counterfactual value, is always telling the question, what would have arisen if the fire service wouldn't have existed. And this is more simple to have always this question, to better document and to better study what could have been done on what we did really. This work is done in 3 directions today, because we want to go a little bit further, but now we can speak about the value of the saved lives by fire department, the value of housing structure preserved against fire, and the third one is about wildfire and the saved value during wildfire fights. So I want also to explain main principle, main ideas. We are used to do what I call monographic studies. It's kind of inquiry, a post-fire, lessons learned dossier, for example. So in this case, you use very dedicated and very precise data because you know exactly how many persons were involved, how many buildings has been destroyed, or how many hectares, and how many have been preserved at the same. And if you saved lives in this case, you can account really how many lives you saved. So that's what I call a monographic study. So they give very precise results, but sometimes because you study only uncommon situations, very frequently these numbers, the outcomes are not witnessing from the generality. So they are far from the averages we could have when you do systemic studies with mean values and with big data. So that's the quite the difference. It's a little bit close to microeconomics and macroeconomics. I see François Delorme to see if I don't say very silly things, but that's my idea. It's more global view and consolidated for systemic studies. So we decided to embrace the systemic studies, to give accountability and very simple model to our colleagues, because we don't want to have only this evaluation for our fire department, but also for others. So that's I already said that. I see that I have some connection problems. Is it the case, Anaïs?
It's okay. We can hear you and we see the PowerPoint.
I can shut down the video if you don't hear me correctly. So I already spoke about monographic studies. So what is to be added about monographic studies is that we detected that in monographic studies, it's important to deduce the costs. What I call the costs is the losses, that's always the case, but also the fighting costs. And the fighting costs are interesting to know the exactly net benefit of the operation. On another hand, when you do a systemic study, we suggest not including the service costs, because when you have a general benefit, for example, for a territory, a city, a country, you immediately compare this result with the budget of the fire service. So that means if you deduce the fighting costs or the budget of the fire departments, it's a kind of duplication to deducing twice the same cost. So I suggest not deducing the fire services cost from systemic studies. And of course, we want to deal with averages, means, because we have big data. So it's possible to use it at the top of the country, the top of the state, maybe the city, but sometimes in single city, you have some quarters who are more expensive than other ones. If you save a house, it's not the same price, but that's the definition of an average. So our calculations principle will be demonstrated by the following speakers. But of course, we have the idea of to give a calculation for a safe value for one mission, allowing each fire department to do very simple calculation at the end of the year. I had, for example, 20 operations against collective housing buildings. So regarding to the outcomes, you have only to multiply the outcomes of our study by 20, and you have an approach of the saved value during housing, collective housing, building, firefighting. And of course, that gives the idea is to do the same for save lives and for wildfires. That will be very precise, of course, by the following speakers. So did I finish? Yes, I probably finished. There is no conclusion because my conclusion is an opening to the others. I want to stress that you will see that the value of life in Canada is much more higher. It's not the same as the cost of living, which is totally different, I guess. So that's an issue of statistics, of course, but that the question of Simona Cavallini is, of course, absolutely fundamental, and we have not to evaluate the value of the lives. We have to take in account all the statistics studies and the publications on it. So I don't want to be too long because I want to let room to the others. If you have questions, I can answer. I try to give a general presentation to say, take care when we give our outcomes. There is always a small monkey on your shoulder referring to an operation you know. And you say, oh, this average is a little bit high or a little bit low regarding to what I know. But when you think to an operation you know, it's one case study. It's a monographic study. So you compare a monographic study to a systemic one. So it never works. So take care of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Tsulemat, do you have a question or a comment about this complementary study?
Thank you. It was really interesting, but I have a naive general question. So I guess it's easy to know the cost of prevention campaign, awareness campaigns, this kind of thing. But is it possible to quantify the effect of prevention on the final cost, as you already showed? I mean, so it's another kind of investment, so prevention. And could you assess how it can affect your final bill, I would say?
So it's a very important clue, but very difficult to answer, because with Dave we already had some exchanges about it, estimating the value of the prevention is very difficult. For example, in a collective housing, of course, if you destroy only one apartment, it's probably because prevention was well done. And I know only one publication on this issue, which was in Face au Risque. It was issued by Fire Department 81, and it's interesting because it's about the comparative study of the cost of because there was a fire in a collective housing, but very low cost. I don't know the English word. Very low cost collective housing, which was, of course, not fully respecting the guidance of prevention. And there was a large destruction, quite a half of the structure. And the fire department compares the cost of what it would have been to follow the guidance. How much would have it be cost to be in alignment with the rules instead of rebuilding the half of the house? So it's an interesting paper, but I cannot really answer to your question. So,
if I can I just complete that answer, Monsieur Monet? Yeah, what we're working on, Monsieur Delorme and I, is we address that topic specifically, addressing the economic impact of fire prevention. What we did was take the rise in total building value for a certain city and the down statistics of fires. So what the crossing between the two is the economic impact of that. So we did it on a micro level for a certain city. We're going to have the numbers shortly, but for now we see a trend, a clear trend between investing in fire prevention, meaning more fire preventionists, better building codes, better fire prevention initiatives. We see a clear correlation between this and there's a downward trend in fires. All this while there is an increase in overall building construction and building value. So proportionally, there should have been as much fire as there were building construction, you know, but that's not what we see. We see building construction going up, building value going up for a certain city, and we see fires going down. And there's a direct correlation with investing in your fire prevention. We see that. We've narrowed it down. I don't know, François, if you want to
no, I think it's fine. In fact, it's even more than a correlation. We did some regression analysis in order to ascertain the cause to effect impacts, and then it was statistically significant for a lot of relationships. So we were very happy with the results, and to try to dig the effect of prevention on a number of key social economic variables.
The report's going to be out in 2021.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another question in the chat. Ignoring operational cost of human and firefighting resources deployed in the theoretical saved value avoids double counting, but the cost-benefit analysis of the firefighting operations may need to consider ops costs also. No? What do you think?
Yes, yes. I speak about systemic studies, but at the end of these systemic studies, you will see it in the first talk. Amr, it's the third of the session. She will demonstrate that at the end we do a cost benefit for an individual intervention coming back to the cost of the operation. So our model allows to do this cost benefit analysis. Dear Professor Bellon.
That's a perfect transition then, because if I'm not mistaken, now it's the turn of Amr Caravan. So Amr, I let you the stage.
Okay, it's good for you.
Yes, we can see your presentation.
So hello everybody, I'm very pleased to be here and to present you the project about the economic view on emergency services with the particular case of saved lives. So let's go. So we all agree we want a quick and efficient emergency response, but at the same time, our public authorities are looking for budget efficiency. But why it's so important? Because French fire departments usually deal with personnel emergencies. In fact, this is 85% of missions. And saving life assessment drives public officials with investment choices, aim at reducing the risk of mortality. They want compared investment with lives saved benefits. In fact, firefighter actions must be evaluated in order to account their effectiveness. Evaluating the value assigned to a life saved or serious injuries avoided allows in comparison against fire department annual budgets. Because the question is, what is the real benefit? So the objective of our study is to estimate the value saved by the intervention of firefighters. So how should we evaluate what is truly saved? So firstly, accident happens with seriously injured people, and then firefighters are called. In the first case, if we suppose that there is no firefighter intervention, there will be important damages, as we can see in red. In the second scenario, fire department is engaged. and firefighters' quick action and first aid realized reduce the severity of the injury. So we estimate that yes, there are injuries, but they are less significant, as we can see in orange. But sometimes firefighter action really saved lives, as it represents in green. And this is the subject of our study. For your information, when we say a life saved, that means a firefighter practice resuscitation, like cardiopulmonary resuscitation or emergency extraction. If there is no firefighter intervention, people would have died. So how to estimate the number of saved lives? So we had to estimate how many lives had been saved in 1 week. In fact, since no fire department is able to give an account of number of saved lives. So we asked call center supervisor to identify which interventions have saved a life during 1 week. So every day they filled in a spreadsheet the number of lives saved. We have focused on a lot of intervention, such as cardiac arrest, strokes, fire rescue, or car accident. And to estimate the number of lives preserved, we have deeply analyzed more than 4,000 intervention reports within 2 years in 2019 and in 2020. And with this sampling, the Bouches-du-Rhône Fire Department estimates that 50 lives have been saved during the 2 studied weeks in the 2 past years. On average, this intervention will represent a rate of 1.1% in red of health interventions per year. Then we extrapolate this evaluation over a year to answer our first question: how many lives may be saved due to the firefighter interventions? So there are in average more than 120,000 emergency interventions in the Bouches-du-Rhône Fire Department. So these annual health missions and the rates of 1.1% give an estimation of 103,025 lives saved alive during this year. But what is the monetary value for each life saved? For that, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development considered that the human life represents 3 million euros, regardless age, gender, or health. So considering the OECD value, it gives approximately 3.9 billion euros of saved life capital. This very direct evaluation allowed us to communicate and publish this value to our board of policymakers. It's clearly a demonstration of rentability for fire department board. And finally, we would like to study the cost benefit for the fire department. So to refer of the statistical life value expressed by the OECD, we estimate that firefighter action have preserved 3.9 billion euros to the society in 1 year. And considering emergency intervention in the Bouches-du-Rhône Fire Department, each action is evaluated at 33,000 euros. As the average cost of health missions exceeds likely 1,000 at the BDRF, we can assume that any of them has a benefit of more than 32 times its cost. And to conclude, the main limitation is the cultural reluctance to evoke monetization of life. Improvement could be a systematic accounting of saved lives in each operation report, Of course, we don't know the victim health status once coming at the hospital. And finally, this study is really important for our strategic and financial master plan. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ambre. Do you have questions, remarks?
I wanted to ask a question. It's Roman from South Africa. The models that were presented so far are impressive, but I'm missing one important thing, and that is, what is the cost of taking care of the firefighters themselves? Is there any idea about PTSD or anything similar that might have been, so if, let's say, there is burnout in firefighters, has there been any studies looking at how much cost that would that incur to the state, regional level, or anything like that? I'm just curious, really. That is not to be seen as a criticism, rather the opposite.
May I take the mic? Because it's a very, very indirect cost you mentioned, Roman. And of course, when we integrate, when we speak about the cost of a mission, of an operation, we integrate the full costs of the fire department. It means it is, of course, the salaries, the buildings, but also the care of the people. The calculation of the cost of an operation could be given. It's a real full cost, integrating all our direct costs. But if somebody is ill, he doesn't works for us. He is at home or in hospital. So it gives us another cost because we have to pay overhead to other ones to replace him. That's the only cost we have to integrate. But on the other hand, we don't take into account the cost of the caring by hospital or the health care. So it's an indirect cost that we don't have.
Can I just follow up on that just quickly?
Of course.
Thank you, Jean-Paul. That explains a lot. Thank you. Maybe then one suggestion, it might be completely misplaced, but it seems that it might be a good idea then to see what happened as a result of COVID-19 to the costs of healthcare of the firefighters themselves, to see if there is any impact, because I think that would provide some proxy values for things like burnout, psychological problems and things like that. And it might be actually probably far more easier than to adapt the methodology and make it usable wider, because you would also potentially go back to offsetting the ethical issue that was raised earlier, and that is, how can you put a financial value on life? And if you make it a little bit more nuanced using something like that, it will be far more easy to maybe make it more widely acceptable. Thank you.
Well, if I can just put a little word in there, Mr. Roman, we tried with the study we're doing right now on fire prevention. We wanted to do a chapter on if you prevent fire, you prevent firefighter injuries and death. So there's an economic impact to that. But what we failed to have is data. So we can have as much ideas as we want, but at the basis of it all, if the data is not good, and that's what we encountered with the city we're doing right now. Maybe another city there's better data, but for now, I think there is probably a methodology we can use. So you're on something there. I'm pretty sure we'll get there at some point, but for now, no, we didn't have any robust data to go with that. But it's a good topic.
Thank you very much for your question and your answers. We will now listen to Anan. There's another question, sorry. Yes.
A short question, Jean-Paul, regarding those studies, and it's gone also for Canadian friends. With these studies, could you help to get more attention and more money from the the authorities which deliver the budget, or does it only for the beauty of knowing that, because the subject is how you transform that into politic matters to get more money and to be better prepared.
I don't want to be too long because we exceed clearly our time and don't want to stress the further speakers. But of course, it's a real challenge to have the money for the service, and we are very lucky because three days ago, Parliament issued a report about fire department integrating our studies. So we are a little bit proud to do this kind of soft power. To try to explain we are valuable.
The Sherbrooke study, the chief of department went to City Hall, and it permit him to construct one fire station and two crews of firefighters with the study we did. So there is a political weight to that. But in Montreal, they didn't answer to the same study. So there's political context that has to be taken account. So.
And I think it's really valuable also not only for the politicians and the leaders, but also for the citizens, because that clearly shows why we are paying taxes.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now listen to Annan Chadli-Mauricio, who's also from the Bouches-du-Rhône Fire Department in France.
So, hello everybody. I'm very happy to share this moment with you. It's my first time, so I'm sorry for my English. After life saved value, I switched to another chapter on housing value preserved thanks to the intervention of fire departments. So this analysis is less complex because prevention and fire fighting are exclusive tasks of fire departments. And then, unlike forest fires, structures fires only involve marketable values, which make them easier to study. In addition, the data for housing is fully accessible in terms of losses. And of course, insurances play an important role in providing robust data. The question we want to address is how much do the fire departments usually save during housing firefighting? Sorry, I want this one. By avoiding total destruction of the building, fire departments' intervention save some valuable parts of the structure. And we based our work on this obvious equation. You can see it on the screen. The saved is the difference between the value of the losses and the value of the house and the losses. And now we have to find the value of these items. To solve it, we use national data and statistics. The structure value are given by housing market quotation. Of course, we have strong variation across the French territory. Paris is not Marseille. But we choose to use national averages to be fully compliant to all fire departments' requests. Collective housing as well is documented by market and the National Statistics Office to know how many apartments are they in a collective building. To estimate damages, we use a French Insurance Federation data, and we consider the average of compensation payment for house fires as value of losses. The outcomes of our methodology is that the average saved value for individual housing is 209,000, and that means that each fire department mission against house fire saved 209,000. Same calculation is done for collective housing, and it demonstrates that the saved value for any mission against collective housing fire saves 1.2 million in average. If we implement it to Bouches-du-Rhône Fire Department, we obtain the calculation shown. Ultimately, we demonstrate that this small fire department, my employer, saves more than 280 million simply by housing firefighting, more than the Bouches-du-Rhône Fire Department annual budget. This is just an attempt to calculate the value for money of fire departments. Some overestimation is possible because insurance compensations often don't totally cover the damages. On the other hand, we don't take into account indirect costs and value like social cost, economic impact, etc. Of course, further studies are welcome to consolidate these findings. Eventually, these high amounts of money show the real reliability and the profitability of fire departments all over the world. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope it was clear. And Mr. Monet, please help with questions.
Thank you very much. Maybe spectators or other participants can ask their questions or make their remarks.
Maybe a little question or remark, I don't know. I imagine that compensations are proportional to the damages. So about 7,500 euros, that not looks like related to very serious damages, but it's in average. Does it mean that most of the damages are not really serious, or we have some very, very, very serious damages that are averaged by a lot of very, very, very non-serious incidents? I think that it could be interesting to have some other descriptive statistics to know how often we have very serious damages, for example.
May I, Alan, do I save you when answering this question? Mr. Toulema, of course, we would like to have discussions on the numbers because we only use the French Insurance Federation or Association to give a big data average. So I guess the answer is more the second hypothesis you mentioned, probably that the big damages are leveraged by smaller ones in an average. Because, for example, what we know that sometimes you have only a kitchen fire or only a pan fire. So there is no or quite no money in the indemnity, reparation indemnity. So also, when you pose this question, I guess the silly monkey and mention at the end of my talk is on your shoulder, saying you, but sometimes the house is totally destroyed. That's true. But in an average, it's the same when there is no damage.
Thank you for your answer. We also have a question from Professor Vinod Chandran Menon. who says, excellent study. Would the cost of air pollution contained by putting out the fire add to the savings figure substantially?
No, 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 no. Environmental issues are not tackled in the studies of the housing and structure files because it's difficult. There is no data. It's very difficult to do that. But we have an approach for wildfires, and that's a very good introduction for the following speaker, because only through the emission of CO2, we have the ability to approach it. It's not pollution. CO2 is not direct pollution, it's indirect one, but it's interesting as well, however.
And insurances are not giving any compensation for this kind of pollution, I guess, too.
True.
Perfect. So it's another perfect transition because we will listen to Nouela Amir now about the forest case.
Hello, everybody. Yes, I hope you are all going well in this particular period. So I will talk about the forest case. In fact, the calculation of the value of spared losses in the case of forest fires is characterized by a greater difficulty because the forest represent mainly a non-market good, and this is one of the main problem studies in the following presentation. In addition, the different all this study he followed the advent of management reforms in public bodies, so the new public management, and is for this reason that we try to answer to how much do the fire department saves in terms of the value during the forest firefighting. In fact, in the absence, I'm sorry. In fact, in the absence of firefighter intervention while the event of a forest fire, we would think that the damage curves continue to grow exponentially, but in the present study, this is an hypothesis that we have, but is that we limited the fire spread model to 4 hours, which is clearly some underestimation factor. But for different reasons, we assumed that the hypothesis was more close to our local status. For the construction of our model, the study's perimeter encompasses only the fourth massif as well the 200 meter strip around them, which means that the forest fires of crops and natural space is the broad sense will not be taken into account. This also incorporates the value set at the intervals of urban and industrial areas. So to value a non-market good like the forest, it was necessary to establish its values in advance. And in this regard, a distinction is made between use value and non-use value and the option value. The use value arises from the economic use of the asset. Moreover, the non-use value refers to non-instrumental values not associated with a use on which we can directly give a price. For example, in the use value, we can there are another distinction between direct use value and indirect use value. In the direct, we can find the timber logging, or indirect, all the recreation activities like I don't know, all the activities that we can do in a forest or in a natural space. In the non-use value, we have another distinction between existence value and lag value. The existence value is, in the existence value is, for example, the fact that we know that the asset exists, also if we don't use it. And the lag value is the fact that we know that the asset will remain for the future generation. In all these value go to how I can say it in English, go to form the total economic value, so the TAV. In fact, the total economic value is a concept aimed at providing an overall utilitarian measure of the economic value of a natural asset, supporting a plurality of interests. So in other words, we can simply say that the total economic value is the sum of the use value, the option value, and the non-use value. But now we go to see how to evaluate. We have see all the values that we can give to an non-market good like a forest, but how to evaluate these values. So among the different evaluation methods that exist for non-market goods, there are two main ways. The method of reveal the preferences of which we deduce the value that individual place on an asset, which can be estimated from the observation of their behavior, and the method of declared preferences, and in our model is used to evaluate certain goods and services provided by forest. In our study, I have to say that in our study we have used also the the method of calculating the travel cost for evaluate certain subjects. And now we have see what are the methods that we can utilize for for evaluate the value of a non-market good. But we have also to determine what are the elements that can be evaluated. And for this reason, here you can see some elements that we have find. The price per hectare and the value of the wood, the tourist and recreational value, the cost of rehabilitation, and the value of CO2 sequestered, and last but not least, the existence value, option value, and lag value. So regarding the first, the price per hectare and the value of the wood, regarding the number of hectares saved, they are represented by the difference between the part of forest that could have been burned without the intervention, so without the intervention of the firefighters, and the part actually burned. The counterfactual hypothesis implies to evaluate clearly the saved from destruction surface. This has been done by deduction of real burned areas from the potential destructed surface. For the calculation of the wood, the value of the wood, we found it more consistent to consider the density in cubic meters per hectare. And our research allowed to find this by the National Forest Service data, the ONF, split state by state in French regions. So we obtained the average density of wood per hectare, and this value, it has been multiplied by the number of hectares saved during the forest fires, as well as by the price of raw wood, for have a global estimation. And according in our study, it was, we will see it is after, but for the moment, I think this is all. And for the tourist and recreational value, we have assumed that we have used several studies did by AgroParisTech, INRA, and Beta, because we haven't the time to do surveys or to settle questionnaires for have the real answers to our question. So in this regard, we have used the method also of the data transfer from other studies. After we have the cost of rehabilitation. The cost of rehabilitation, in fact, we say that after a fire, the soil is very weakened. So to compensate for the damage, it is always necessary to carry out rehabilitation work to protect the soil from erosion, including the planting of trees. Here we are trying to quantify the value of by the fire services. So we are talking about the areas not damaged after the forest fires. That is the area which were treated and which were protected by the firefighters, and save the cost of rehabilitating the soils. We think also, we have also but the hypothesis that this cost must be included in the case of monographic studies, because it is to be accounted as an expenditure bound to destructed surface. Then we have the value of the CO2, the value of the CO2 sequestered. And for the CO2 sequestered, we have the process that we have used for to obtain the amount of CO2 sequestered. It was it was very hard. So we have begun from the bio-volume of the wood. And from this we have obtained the biomass, and from the biomass we have obtained the ton carbon, and also only after we from the ton carbon we can find the equivalent tons of CO2, and is from the equivalent tons of CO2 I'm sorry, CO2. We have find the price in the market. We have a price, a market price for the CO2. At the time when we did the study, I think it was 26 euro per emission. After, there is the existing value, option value, and lag value. For this value, we hadn't the time also for this to do surveys for estimate the monetary value, so are not integrated in our model. but we know that we have to consider also these three elements. So, and there is also there is also when we have a forest fire, maybe we can have some construction and buildings in the forest, and we have to add the value of the damage to these buildings in our study. After here on we have the methodology used for the application of the study to the Bouches-du-Rhône department, and finally we can see that the value of the saved is the value of wood plus the value of CO2 sequestered plus the value of buildings, the value of hunting and other forest products, and tourist value and value of existence option alike. Here there is a little table with all the monetary price that we have found. There is just one little thing to know is that we refer to average, so there are not always very representative, but we assume that there are good. And for our department, the Bouches-du-Rhône department, we have assumed we have find that 243 hectares of average area saved and 23 individual houses saved on average by fire in 2017 for a totally saved value of 7,298,340. I'm sorry with the number, and for the total interventions that we have in 2017, that was 202. We have a total value saved of 1,474,265,451 euros. So all this was our study for estimate the value of saved of forest in the case of fire. But how I say during this presentation, there are different assumptions that we have made, and there are also different limits. Like the fact that we use average and hypotheses that can be different from the real values, and like the Colonel Jean-Paul Monnet said each forest fire can be more or less dangerous, so the model may not be representative, and the value given to the forest can change from individual to individual. And here I do the reference is for the element that we have to the element that for estimate this element we have to do different surveys and questionnaires. And we have also to say that applying the model to monographic studies or to a larger scale provides an estimate of the total economic value. However, as in previous studies on the value of the saved, the model has these limitations, but we can have an idea of the value, the final value. Thank you for your attention. there are some questions.
Thank you, Nuela. If you have any questions or remarks, feel free to take your mic or to write it in the chat.
May I say that all the limitation and hypotheses taken will be described in a further paper published in the proceeding of the conference. Because, for example, what is very important to understand is that key issue and starting point is the wood density in the forest. So if you have the relevant data we found by Forest Service, you can start for the same study, because this wood density, it would be better if it's there is a kind of screening by region, as we have. If from this wood density, you can start the calculation of the value of the wood, and as well the concentration of carbon dioxide sequestered. So with the market price of carbon dioxide emission, you can calculate also the cost of CO2. And also you can calculate the CO2 emitted during the fire by the same calculation.
I have one comment or question. You have now looked at the value of woods only, but in a forest fire, you might have a spread to the cities, to urban areas. You have not taken that into consideration, the damages caused by the spread of the fire. Have you?
Yes, we did. We did. As Nuela explained, we studied around 200 cases, and it's a seasonal, it's 1 year cases, because we have 3,000 natural fires, but only 200 forest fires. So we study it deeply, counting all the houses preserved. So we issued an average of a number of houses preserved during this Wi-Fi, and we crossed it with a previous study to have the cost, the value of the houses preserved.
Okay.
Thank you. So I think we are arriving at the end of the session. If you have any more questions or comments, let me know. I think a poll should appear in Zoom that you could answer. And if there is no more remarks, then I will let the stage to the closing speeches of the conference.
I think we should try to close before 4 o'clock Central European time. So I start the closing by now. And we have been through, well, what I would say a marathon week. I calculated we have had about 60 presentations, including the panelists. And all these, if you also include the participants, which have varied a little bit from 30 to 75 for the different sessions. I think we are altogether being close to 30 nations that have been discussing and who has been commenting, learning, and I have learned a lot. I have actually listened to all presentations, so it's been a marathon week. But of course, the pandemic situation moved us into this Zoom area. And I must say, even if we couldn't meet physically in Paris, this has also given some benefits. Because now if we had been in Paris, maybe someone hadn't been able to travel far away from Australia, Africa, there will only be few. But now everybody could be on. They see the faces of the other ones. They know who to cooperate with in the future, and they can do a project together, come up with ideas. And I think this has been a very, very valuable added thing. miss the good food, we miss the good wine, and we miss getting together in Paris. So I'm so happy that I know, and I will at the end of my speech, and I will also call Snezhana and Roman with some practical things. I look forward for that when we meet in Paris next year. Hopefully, no, there are very good news about injections by vaccine. So hopefully in the next half year, this would turn the pandemic into a different situation. But maybe we also, as we discussed under the pandemic, maybe we might have even a third wave, because when people start vaccination, that might also release a little bit about the restriction in moving, using masks, etc. And we might have close that one. So we might see that it still take half a year, and we might have mutations which they have to, and we might have to live with this virus in the future in different variants. But this thing, we learned a lot. We learned something more we have to add to our risk picture, which was there. It was predicted, but I don't think everybody thought it would happen. It's a long time since the Spanish flu. It's not so long time since the Ebola crisis, but now we know that this could affect the whole world. We have addressed it in the conference. I think that was good. And there was papers. I really also liked this last session, trying to put monetary value on what we do in emergency management and safety. I worked in safety and emergency management for 50 years. And there has always been a challenge when someone is going to invest in safety issues that, can we afford that cost? To have evaluation, you do know on fire department, might be more easy to find what you're going to put a value on. But this way of doing it is important for all areas of safety, because when we are convincing those who take the decisions on investment in safety and emergency issues, having good studies underlining the need and how much we can save for doing it. So I think this last session was quite good, actually putting numbers on what we are working with every day. What else should I say? Okay, we come more to the, I know that the French chapter has promised us to come to Paris next year. So we will do that. And usually when someone have done a TIEMS conference, they are really exhausted and think this we won't do for at least 20 years in the coming. But to actually announce, and Christian announced in the beginning, we will do it physically next year. And that's actually we are very happy for that. We have some, before I come to the thanking field, thanks everybody that's been involved. I like to give you some practical things, because I have Roman, which have some good news for you, because he has been communicating with a couple of journals which are willing to pick out some of the papers and with peer review of this, that they can appear in international journals. Could you, Roman, tell everybody a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you, Harald. So at the moment, we've got one journal that has confirmed a special issue. It is published in the United States. It's called the Journal of Emergency Management. It is indexed in Scopus, so for academic purposes, it will count in most countries. What is going to happen is we have communicated, that was mainly myself and Harald, with the editor of the publishing house. And the idea is that we would invite about 10 papers from the people who have contributed to the conference, either via PowerPoint or proceedings paper, to submit a full version of the paper, formatted according to the website and instructions which will be provided. and then invite about 10 people to submit their papers through the peer review system, and then see if these could be accepted for a special issue, which will be run by the publishing house, but the editorial tasks will be carried out by the TIEMS side. And this will be arranged right after the conference, but the crucial roles will be played by the members of the program committee. And there is still one other journal that I'm in contact with. Unfortunately, they haven't responded yet with final decision, but I will follow up and update everyone in the next 2 weeks. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Roman. But this also means that we are still missing some information from some of you, abstracts or whatever, because Snezhana, she will then put up what she needs to fulfill and put out the proceedings. Please, Snezhana.
Yes, we usually at TIEMS conferences, we deliver proceedings on USB stick on the venue, but this year we decided to do it after the conference because we have a great opportunity to collect all your presentations, which we will put in the PDF format, and together with your papers or abstracts, we will create proceedings. You will be all notified when and how to download it, how unpacked the proceedings. To do this, we still miss some presentations from presenters and some abstracts or full papers, whatever. So I kindly ask all of you who haven't sent it yet to put it in the right format, the Word format you already received several times from Tom Robertson, and to upload to EasyChair by mid next week, if possible. Otherwise, I have to do abstracts for you. This is the only way to finalize the proceedings. Yes, and I think Thomas Robertson will send a reminder to all attendees, to all presenters, to do so by 10th of December. Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, and we will also put this on the website and in TIEMS library. And I know that the French chapter has also made a video which will be put on the websites. So you can see yourself and you can enjoy yourself also in the future. Repeat it when you like to see some good things. So please follow this up, because we TIEMS have now, this is TIEMS 27th annual conference. I missed one last year because I hurt my leg, but otherwise I've been with all of them. And this has been a long journey, but I think we have reached far out. We have Australia, Africa, US. What we realized when we put up the time of Central European time, and especially Thomas Robertson, I saw he was on, he had to get up 4 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in order to reach the first. And the Australian, they were in bed before the last session. So this is a challenge being international, but I think it's okay. I don't want to keep you now because it's been a long week, but before I close and give the word to Christian, I would like to thank everybody involved, especially those in the French chapter. I know for you, it's been a week now, but for them, we have worked actually the last half year. It's Christian leading this work and Jean-Paul, and there has been hundreds of mails back and forth in order to put this together. And also behind the scenes, we don't see them. Manon and Lorianne has done a great job behind the scene. And we have had reviewers, Bean Chetri, sitting in Nepal, Thomas Robertson, and we have Roman, who is on here, and Snezhana being then responsible for the proceedings. So it's been a lot of hard work behind the scenes, and I think everything turned out absolutely excellent. It's been a pleasure to meet you all, and I wish you a great Christmas and welcome to Paris next year, and have a safe trip wherever you are. Maybe you haven't moved at all out of your room, but anyway, we hope we can move a lot next year. So enjoy the upcoming Christmas and the new year with the vaccine and an end to COVID-19 for the time being. That was all from me, and please, I leave the floor to you, Christian, to finalize and end our annual conference 2020. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harald. I'm not going to thank everybody because you did it already, but I would like just to thank you for the initiative and for animating TIEMS. So thank you very much. And maybe I would like to say two words in this conclusion is the word resilient that we have been talking about for a week, and now I think that we have seen very clearly that we have the resilience as we knew and as we practice every day in the emergency management, meaning the organizational resilience, the planning, the mitigation, the management of event, the lesson learned, and so forth, which is the organization. But you have also a new resilience, which is more wider, and we have to think about that. And we have to think to the resilience in terms of preparedness, adaptation to the climate change. We have to think adaptation to the new form of technology that generate new hazards, like electric cars, like things, and in fact we need to study that a little bit further and more. So we have a lot of work in this field of emergency management, I think, for resilience preparedness, with looking to deep interdependencies, to looking to the deeply to the different supply chains. So make more studies, make more training, make more exercises to be prepared to different kind from the standard risk to the exceptional risk to the shock, and we know that is not always the case, because as we have seen with the COVID-19, a shock is never very well prepared, and so we have to work on that. So I think it was very, very interesting. We have a lot of work in front of us worldwide. We share a lot of things, different countries and continents, and I think that why TIEMS is very great is to share at this level. So so thank you very much, Harald. Thank you, everyone, and I wish you also a very good vacation, Christmas, and end of the year, and the new year 2021 without COVID, we hope so. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Have a safe stay, and I probably forgot to say thank you to all listeners and all that also presented and put in papers. This made this conference great. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you next year.